it's funny because I was up at Bungie. Is it funny? I was up at Bungie a couple of weeks ago, and someone else brought up this question in the roundtable. They said, like, is this the amount of team shotting and the kind of the necessity to disengage, has it made for a more boring PvP meta, which is James's least favorite word? And their response was, we're not seeing that at all. People are enjoying it. And that was the end of that conversation. Yeah, but yeah, I'm trying to get for my hunter. I've got 3 characters now, all at the level cap because I'm a sick man. I'm trying to get for my hunter this samurai themed face mask, but instead I've had like 3 submachine guns in a row because the packages, when you turn them in, are random drops. Basically, you get like a tug of the slot machine. We'll be coming on to some of this stuff I think later. And that token system is really like super unloved in that game, I think for good reason. The way Iron Banner used to work was you would rank up over the course of a week, so it only runs for a week, and once you hit level 3 it would let you buy the legs. Once you hit level 4 it would let you buy a gun that had been pre-designed as a kind of thing you could purchase, but now it's just like all random all the time, and I'm not a fan, and I don't think anyone else is either.
Well, I think that's the problem with it, right? Is it's not just like, okay, here's one element of this game that is sort of RNG random. It's like every single progression system in that game is turning in tokens for a random drop.
But the irony is, Steve, is like the one thing I liked being random, which was the drops themselves, the perks on them, have now all become prescriptive and static, and I think they're such a strange developer, and I need to not dominate this whole podcast just kind of musing on some of the decisions they make, but I'm still having fun.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I think I've cooled off on it massively. I still really want to do the raid and experience that, and I pop in for Nightfalls, and that's about it. I'm done.
Yeah, we've set the we're doing a raid Sunday actually, and the PC Gamer Club clan has been running the raid without our guiding hand.
Go them.
Or our hand to mess them up. So proud of those guys. I really like, one of the things actually I really like is some of the clan incentive stuff they've got, whereby there's I think 60 of us or so, 66 maybe in the PC Gamer clan at the moment, and if they complete an activity with other clan members, so like the raid, or they win a Crucible match, or they do the Nightfall, or they go flawless in Trials, which is the very hard PvP thing, then everyone else in the clan gets a drop from one of the vendors in the game. So it's nice to log in and go, my worker bees have provided me with this sweet loot sustenance.
Yeah, I mean, passive accumulation, that is some powerful, potent shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God, for your brain.
But I don't think many other games do that. Like, I can think of, like, here's something your buddy earned for you, and it's waiting for you.
I'm very surprised it hasn't rolled out. If that was in Counter-Strike, I would still be playing Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
But even in something as innocuous as single-player Stardew Valley, it's like, going to bed in the morning, eggplants guaranteed, my friend, or I'm gonna have all that wine. Yeah, and it's just happening in that feeling of it's happening in the background. I've laid these seeds, you know.
Like, it's even in games which don't have trading. I remember like playing like Animal Crossing and Viva Pinata back in the day with my other half, and like you could leave things for each other or send stuff to each other in those games. Yeah, and that kind of social interaction, I think, is really potent. And I always thought, like, much as Destiny and like Hearthstone, which is obviously my other big game, don't want to have trading mechanics because I guess they would speed up the progression system because everyone would be able to just horse trade for their stuff. There's something so strong about going, like, imagine if it was like once a month you can trade one thing, and it has to be to someone who's been on your friends list for a month, say, so to kind of avoid some of the eBay type vibe. The thought of me sending a gun I didn't want but I knew my buddy really wanted to them, I think would be amazing. Or giving someone a card that I didn't like but I knew they had been hunting for.
Yeah.
I just want people to share and to love. Is that so wrong?
Not at all, Tim. Okay. Steven, I know you just returned from, you were visiting Bluehole in Korea. Yeah. Not to see PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
No.
But to see an upcoming game. You don't have to talk about it, but just saying that to sort of frame what you've been playing. You've been sort of on the road a lot, but what have you been playing?
Will it shock you if I say World of Warcraft? Is that a surprising I got back into World of Warcraft. Okay, I took a break from it. Now I'm back. I'm talking about World of Warcraft. I'm committing. Yeah. So
Great.
World of Warcraft, the new raid comes out on the 28th. They have their new update that came out in August. So I finally dipped my toes back into that, and this is the last major update for Legion. So it's sort of like they are beginning the retirement process for that expansion as they gear up for what's coming next.
When you say dipped your toes, Steve, does that mean you're now like you've waded waist deep?
Yeah. No, like like 6 hours last night. I'm up to my eyeballs in World of Warcraft. I'm willfully drowning myself in this game. But no, it's really good. Legion continues to be like the best expansion pack they've made in the last 5 years, if not more. It's this one's a lot more story heavy, which I'm really enjoying. I like MMOs that have much heavier. I think if you're going to do the MMO thing of like everyone's the hero, it makes sense to really buy into that and go full steam and just be like, yeah, let's have lots of cutscenes and lots of story and like really dig into that power fantasy of you being basically like this god at this point. Every player character is this god who has killed other gods millions of times at this point. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have too much more to say on it. It's Legion. It's good. It continues to be a really solid MMO. I'm enjoying myself.
Are you still tanking, Steve? I remember reading about you learning to tank.
Yeah, I'm still tanking. It's gotten way better. I love it now. Like, I don't think I'll ever go and play a different class. Tim's referencing an article I wrote probably 8 months ago at this point about learning to tank in World of Warcraft and how awful it was because you basically carry the entire party on your back. It's up to you to set the pace at which you clear the dungeon. It's up for you to know the mechanics of every single fight. So knowing when something's about to happen and where the party needs to move and what they need to do to adapt. And it's very stressful when you're getting into it. Now I'm at a point where I just love it. It's really high risk, high reward, and it's fun to play a game where you kind of are expected to be better than everyone else. The damage dealing players just show up and they just get to make big numbers explode out of monsters' heads and feel good about themselves. But the tank is like the team captain and you're the one that needs to know the strategies. And I enjoy that. If you're someone that enjoys like reading a guide for an hour, before.
What's the in the current like meta? What's the greatest cowards class? Which class can afford to like hide in encounters and really get away with not doing too much?
Oh man, I don't know if there's any that can really. I mean, the other problem with there's like 18 classes in that game because there's the classes, but then there's the subclasses. So like a priest can be a DPS or a healer. I think just about any DPS can usually like get away with not pulling their weight. They can die in a lot of encounters and it won't ruin things, and they can stay dead for the entire boss fight for the most part. Yeah. So I mean, I'm shitting on DPS hard. I'm sure there's people who are listening right now who play damage dealing characters and are like, hey, but play a better class.
Bold.
Yeah.
Wow.
Challenge.
Well, I've been similarly getting into a game that I spent a lot of time with in 2015, 2016. Rainbow Six Siege basically just hit its 2-year anniversary, and just this week it released its latest update called Operation White Noise, which added 3 new operators, which were characters, and a new map, and a bunch of fixes and changes and stuff. Yeah, it's good.
I'm laughing because I want to know if it's going to be followed by Operation Brown Noise.
Brown Noise.
What would those perks be, I wonder?
So it is as you might be able to gather from the name, it's a hacking themed update. 2 of the characters have these kind of, they're South Korean operators. The map is set in South Korea. It's this kind of skyscraper luxury office tower. It has like a museum and a gift shop. I don't really know what to call it, but it's cool. So the map, I'm excited about that because it addresses one of the game's longest standing issues, which is this technique called spawn peeking. So spawn peeking is sort of like, it's like the opposite of spawn camping. You're looking into someone else's spawn and shooting them seconds into the match. And although Ubisoft has kind of done some rearranging of objects in the maps to discourage this, make it harder.
I mean, is it a glitch?
No. So it's okay. So there's attackers and defenders, right?
Yeah.
So the defenders can sort of say perch up in say a second story window, and if they're very savvy and good at the game, it does require skill. They know, okay, there's X amount of spawn points. We can put one person each on defense watching one of those spawn points, we can have a chance of quickly breaking a window, peeking out, and hitting them at long range without them expecting it. Huh. So it's an aggressive tactic. I think it's valid, but it is not very fun. I think they're right to kind of discourage the behavior.
Is it prevalent?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, of course it is.
It probably happens every other match. Okay. Someone tries it or is successful. So anyway, this map completely designs around that. There's no way for the defenders to sort of peek out. It's a skyscraper. It has 3 stories. The 3rd story, only the attackers can access it. There's no way the defenders can even get up there or see anything. So that's really cool, just to have a map that's, you feel that kind of total security to kind of set up, do your thing as an attacker.
Has it got like a kind of Die Hard Nakatomi Plaza vibe? That's what I'm looking for.
Oh sure, it's less officey. There's not like cubicles and stuff really. There's a server room. There's some art gallery stuff. There's a bar. It's sort of this weird kind of hotel / office vibe, but it's very gorgeous. I like how compact it gets. There's a cool kind of promenade that encircles it. Aesthetically, it's a great looking map, and I think honestly, looking at the total map pool of Rainbow Six Siege, they've done an amazing job of really pushing themselves on artistic diversity. They have like this, it feels like a Miami resort. They have a college campus, which is a little bit dark. But they have this big diversity of environments. They have stuff that's more military. They have stuff set in the Middle East. It's like really, really diverse, unlike other FPSs. That's cool. Anywho, I'm even more excited about one of the new operators. Her name is Dokeyebi, I guess, and she can hack characters' phones. So that sounds strange. Every defender in Rainbow Six Siege can use their phone to look at static security cameras. So say I'm like on the bomb site, I'm like, waiting for people to come in. I don't know, I can hear some sounds in the distance. I can look at my phone and say like, okay, I'm monitoring these cameras. I'm just like flipping between them, right? The attackers can destroy those cameras and prevent me from, sort of deny me a resource. But what Dokeyebi can do is she can make the defender's phones buzz. Like it's like this really authentic vibration sound and animation. And it'll buzz indefinitely until I spend like 4 or 5 seconds holding it down a key, putting my gun away to reset my phone.
Oh my God.
So it's really clever. Basically, the way that you want to use this ability is you want to, as an attacker, kind of be ready to attack. You're set up. You have your people kind of posted up. You launch this virus to get everybody's phones buzzing. They're immediately you're basically texting anxiety to the enemy. It's amazing. You're like,
I like the idea the defenders have phones anyway, so they can text loved ones as the breaching charge goes off to go. It's all over. I won't be home tonight. Like,
exactly.
Quick selfie as the rounds begin hitting your Kevlar.
Exactly. But I thought this was like a really clever design. Ubisoft, for one thing, like it taps into, I don't know, if you're a person watching on Twitch, you probably have a phone and stuff like that. Like, what it's like to experience that like anxiety and sort of when you hear that sound, like there's intense.
This phone
meaning.
could actually go off at any time. So it's a new phone. I don't understand how to put it into airplane.
Is that Razer's phone?
Yeah, it's the Razer phone. I'm testing.
Yeah.
So
well, there you go.
It's quite good so far.
Anyway, some really clever stuff. There's another operator who can appear invisible to drones and cameras. That's pretty cool. But otherwise, I just think Rainbow Six Siege, Ubisoft, they've done a great job of keeping the game healthy. There's definitely some issues still. I think the reporting system needs to get a lot better. TKing is still a huge issue in casual, although they're talking about improvements to that.
They're talking about taking that out, right? I read that this week, I think.
Exactly, yeah. But that would have some consequences too, because like TKing and team damage, it adds this risk in a lot of situations. Yeah. Throwing grenades and shooting around a character with a shield, a ballistic shield in front of you. Like, you're sort of weighing the cost benefit. If you're just spamming bullets around a guy with a shield and it's doing no damage, it really changes things. So it's tough. Anyway, I'm just super grateful, honestly, that one of the biggest game companies in the world has made a multiplayer only competitive shooter. They've updated it continuously for 2 years. Yeah, there's season passes and stuff, and if you have a problem with that, maybe that's an issue. There are a lot of different ways of buying into the game. There's like a starter set and all that kind of thing.
Do you think the phone lady will be like a competitively viable operative, or is she going to be like the meme character that people play on Twitch?
I think she's the latter. Pro players might find a really clever way of using her, but honestly, it's like this harassment, and I think that higher ranked players in the ranked matchmaker are probably going to care a lot more about like what weapons is the character carrying, and the ability to sort of break through walls and stuff like that. That's truly game changing, rather than that's going to rattle an inexperienced player.
When her phone is going off, can you just ignore it and continue playing?
Oh, definitely. And arguably, like, that's a counter strategy too. You can like let people know where you are through that ambient noise. You can just let it ring, let it ring, let it ring. You're broadcasting information, of course, but if it doesn't bother you, it bothered the hell out of me, and I put like 200 some hours into that game. It made me feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Really clever. Good stuff.
That's really cool.
All right. So, hey, it's Black Friday this weekend, and tomorrow's Thanksgiving.
Turns out it's Black Friday right now.
It's Black,
on Tuesday
Yeah.
we're recording this.
We've been joking about
Every year it moves a day forward.
Yeah.
and a day backward. It's moving in both directions.
Yeah.
Soon it will be.
Eventually we'll live in a year where it's just Black Friday all year long.
Black 2018.
The Black era.
Oh.
Anywho, so hey, if you are building a PC, if you're looking for upgrades, if you're looking for just deals, it's a great time to be doing that.
Yeah. Deals on games too. Most of the big retailers.
And first and foremost, if you're listening, I want to direct you guys to what we'll be doing on our site. It's on our, all this stuff is on our site right now. Best deals for individual components. So it's like we're tracking down monitors, SSDs, keyboards, you name it, hard drives, monitor, graphics cards, all that stuff individually. But we've also got these kind of hubs dedicated to showing off collectively, like, what are the best deals right now. So we'll just kind of briefly go through that stuff, but really in greater detail, head on over to PCgamer.com. It should be hard to miss on our front page throughout the weekend.
Yeah. We'll be tweeting stuff out as we find it, for sure.
Yeah.
And like I'm saying, like most of the big, like for software as well, most of the big key sellers are having their own sales. Steam sales started yesterday, was it? This morning, the autumn sale.
Yeah, so right now, in terms of hardware, our favorite gaming laptop, actually, the Asus ROG Strix GL502 VS. Man, they really need to get better at this sort of thing.
You can just call him Rog from here on in.
It's $200 off. So this is a 120 hertz, 1080p G-Sync laptop, 1070 GTX 1070 inside there. So it's $1,500, usually $1,700. That's a really nice discount. Otherwise, one of our favorite headsets, the HyperX Cloud Revolver, is $88, usually $120. So,
Still,
that's always good. In terms of games, obviously this is going to be a little bit more dynamic throughout the weekend, but right now, hey, one of your favorites, Tim, Destiny 2 is just $35, $36, I guess.
Yeah, and is that for the
on Green Man Gaming?
Oh, for the deluxe edition is down to $70.
Yeah, deluxe edition $70.50.
A 30% saving. And a friend of mine actually last night said to me, "Oh, do you think he wanted to buy Destiny and gift it to one of our old friends who played on console with us?" And he was like, he said to me, "Do you think it will come down in price?" And I was like, "Oh no, I don't think so. It's only just come out." So it shows A, how much I know, and B, the kind of savings, the hot savings that are going to be out there, friends.
Has it been a month on PC? It's been at least 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Also, Witcher 3 Game of the Year Edition. I've heard that PC Gamer likes that game. It's $20 on GOG. Middle-earth Shadow of War, $36 on Green Man Gaming.
These are like all my games.
This just came out.
Yeah.
I mean, God.
I really like Shadow of War. I think I liked it a little bit more than you probably, Evan. I've nearly finished it.
I enjoyed the time that I input into it. I'm not going to put any more into it. But hey, that's $24 off. You've got one of our favorites, XCOM 2. We talked about it all year long, pretty much. $20 on Green Man Gaming. So anyway, I'm not going to go through all of them, guys, but definitely
New South Park. I'm going to just throw that in.
Yeah, $45. Again, that was $60 a month ago, days ago.
The Hearthstone Reddit is up in arms, as it always is, that Blizzard is not doing any sort of deal on Hearthstone, which it never seems to do. Weird.
Well,
yeah,
a little bit understandable. But again, we're going to be hitting this stuff all weekend long into Cyber Monday. If there's an interesting deal, we're going to be calling it out on Twitter, on PCGamer.com. Definitely check it out, guys.
Steven, does Canada do Black Friday?
Yeah, no, of course. But we do, like, it's weird because our Thanksgiving was a month ago.
Yeah, that passed unnoticed down here. Sorry, man.
All right.
It's all right.
One of the main.
I have 2 Thanksgivings. That's the bonus.
That's crazy, man. Double Thanksgiving. That's a Hobbit's dream, Steven. All right, so we talked about loot boxes a lot on this, understandably, on this show throughout the year, and I don't think we want to spend another 20, 30 minutes digging into this topic. I think it's going to continue to be an issue for gamers, press, publishers, and developers alike for the foreseeable future, just as like always online DRM was for a number of years. And we still hear about it here and there. Anywho, but we did want to take a moment to sort of touch on some recent news that just hit yesterday. Make sure you guys have a good grasp on that and kind of what it means from our perspective. So yesterday, we circulated the story based on some reports by Belgian press that Belgium's Gaming Commission was expressing some intention to ban loot boxes. Now, this all kind of began a few weeks ago, where Belgium's Gaming Commission launched this investigation into whether loot boxes would constitute a form of gambling. So we knew that they were kind of working on this, thinking about it, kind of deciding how to define loot boxes in Overwatch and Battlefront 2, for example, against other forms of gambling. And yesterday, there's this report from that same Gaming Commission in Belgium, where the Minister of Justice said that mixing gambling and gaming, especially at a young age, is dangerous for the mental health of a child. And he also said stuff like, the mixing of money and addiction is gambling. So, and they sort of expressed this intention to ban in-game purchases outright if you don't know exactly what you're purchasing.
Yeah.
Right, and that's like a really key distinction there. So today, there's kind of this new clarification that, well, that wasn't necessarily, those like very strong words that we and a lot of other sites reported on weren't like the conclusion of the commission. They just sort of represent the intention. So there's
scope,
yeah. So there's sort of, as these governments weigh in, I think we in press are really trying to figure out, okay, you're saying these things. Does that represent like you're going to turn this into law? You're going to take action against this, or does it sort of represent pressure and more kind of abstract rhetoric? So again, today, the commission and out of a new report out of the Belgian press, again, said that those words were descriptive of the investigation's intent rather than its conclusion. So,
I'm slightly unclear on like what the exact ramifications, if they decided they wanted to, like in inverted commas, ban them, would be, because Belgium's part. I don't know why I'm asking you. I should know this, but Belgium is part of the EU, right? So like I would assume anything that had like substantial far-reaching implications would have to also go through the EU, or maybe they can ban on a more piecemeal basis. We're busy exiting from the EU, and I've displayed my own ignorance of how the rules actually work. So maybe that's going to be for the best. But so,
at almost the same time, we saw a Congress member, a representative out of Hawaii, here in the United States, addressing the same topic and sort of issuing some of the same sort of rhetoric. Again, this is not Hawaii saying it's definitely going to pass a law or about to pass a law or take action or issue some regulation, but we're starting to see like this swelling of, I guess I'm going to continue to describe it as rhetoric and sort of intentions brewing around loot boxes as an issue. So Hawaii Representative Chris Lee said that we need to address to ensure that particularly kids who are underage, who are not psychologically and emotionally mature enough to be able to gamble, which is why gambling is prohibited under 21, are protected from being trapped into these cycles which have compelled many folks to spend thousands of dollars. So he does say, we're looking at legislation this coming year which could prohibit access or prohibit the sale of these games to folks who are underage in order to protect families, so on and so forth. And he also adds, these kinds of loot boxes and microtransactions are explicitly designed to prey upon and exploit human psychology in the same way casino games are so designed.
Fair.
This is especially true for young adults. So, again, you're sensing a theme here. He's particularly concerned with kids. Think of the children.
I mean, wouldn't the gaming industry argue back that kids aren't supposed to be spending on the Visa card that's attached to the Steam account or to your Origin account or whatever anyway?
Well, that has a huge echo to video game violence, right? Yeah. Like that was one of the perhaps correct counter arguments that, well,
they're already regulated.
Yeah, these games are violent. Yeah. Don't let your kids play them.
I mean, so one we talked about this quite a bit in one of our editorial meetings this morning, and like one of the things that I think the top voted comment in our Belgium story which had like I think 1,200 comments last time I looked at it, was someone saying you've got politicians demanding a certain type of feature gets taken out of a game, and you've got gamers like rapturously agreeing with them. 2017's weird, and like I get it. Like it's interesting you mentioned video game violence stuff, because I remember there was a politician whose name I forget now, but who was a really odious guy, and he would kind of be constantly bringing these kind of grandstand motions about video games to the Houses of Commons, just really not because he really actually had any
to score political points.
Yeah, because he felt like it was a very good noise for him to be making for certain corners of the press and stuff, like the non-specialist press. And I find it slightly like, we're all agreed that the current conflagration around loot boxes is one of the key moments of 2017, and I described it this morning as saying, I can't recall a time when the relationship between the people who make games and the people who play them has become so kind of skeptical and divisive. So I think it's definitely going to be a story that runs, and I think it's definitely a story that is legislation the answer? I'm not sure, but I think like the industry needs to take some pretty serious stock of what's going on and the reaction that we've seen in the last couple of weeks. However, I'm not sure getting career politicians involved is necessary. Like, do we really want to rely on Belgium to solve this? If it was a murder on a train, perhaps I'd call Poirot, but in this instance, Poirot in the case of the missing loot boxes might be quite a good story, actually.
I mean, be careful what you wish for. You only have to look so far as countries like Germany and Australia to see what censorship of violence and other content has done to those countries' markets for games.
Yeah, Germany had green blood for ages, right, in certain types of games? Or
I mean, Wolfenstein 2 in Germany, okay, this is like a highly specific case, and you can argue like, the historical benefits of all this and all that, but Hitler in Wolfenstein 2 doesn't have a mustache.
Is he called Adam Hotler?
like that.
Yeah, and they don't call him Chancellor, or like they call him Chancellor. They call him another title instead of like Great Leader or something. But like even in like Asia, like famously, you're not allowed to show anything related to dead bodies. So like skills in League of Legends, like the skill icons need to be changed, because if it's like a skull and crossbones, it needs to be like something different. And yeah, like
it's just a sad
I hesitate to think that, like, I feel like it was in New York, like as late as the 70s or 80s, when New York finally repealed some of their laws against arcades, because there was the mania that arcades were a type of gambling, or that they inspired that behavior. And
I snuck out of school with a friend of mine to play Double Dragon primary school in the town, so I can confirm that they were a substantial problem.
Right. I don't know. In my mind, I'm thinking like, if the problem here is that, like, I don't know, maybe this is too simple of a solution, but I'm like, the ESRB should almost just start rating games that have loot boxes as automatically mature. And then you at least have the excuse, well, think of the children. Well, the kids shouldn't be playing that game anyway.
I like that, actually, because I know that, like, I always manage to turn it back to Destiny, but I know that one of the reasons, for those of you who've played it, there's like a huge massacre at the start of the game. The humanity's like city is devastated and wiped out. The tower collapses, but you don't actually see anyone get shot. And it was only like post fact when someone said to me, oh yeah, the reason that is if as soon as you see a human suffering, like that is likely to jack, like being lasered or whatever, that's likely to jack the rating up to M, and they always wanted it to be a teen rating. So you've got this actually bizarrely sanitized Pearl Harbor style alien attack, so, and I think I'd be really interested in that, Steve. And I also think, like, if isn't it something like, wouldn't it be good to see like someone like the ESA like get involved and like help come up with like a code of conduct of like what is acceptable, or is that too much? Like, Americans don't like people messing with capitalism, right?
ESA won't do anything. I mean, they're the representatives. The biggest publishers in the world are paying them, but.
I just think, I don't know, like from my perspective, and maybe this is a bad opinion to have, and please tell me if it is, but like when it came to the violence in video games issue, right, and politicians were beating their chests over how awful violent video games were, well, it always rang as so hypocritical to me, because those violent video games at the time, like most of them already had the ESRB was rating those violent video games as mature, and they should never have been in the hands of kids in the first place. And the onus then falls on the parent to actually care and regulate what kind of media their kids are getting into. But I feel like when it comes to these types of arguments, people never really want to say that. Nobody ever wants to say, well, it's the parents' job. Parents always want to like people always want to shift that responsibility off onto some other governing body instead of being like, well, yeah, like, you know, don't have a Visa card hooked up to your kid's BattleNet account that he can just run up a bunch of purchases on, or don't let your kid play a violent video game. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we're much more concerned with how this growing trend affects the general design for everyone of games, right? Progression systems.
Yeah, that too.
You know, we've talked earlier in the year about sort of homogenous reward systems and how, like, you know, you go into a multiplayer game now, you know that, well, I'm going to earn some kind of currency to earn some kind of other randomized box or something, and how kind of samey that makes our reward system feel.
Totally agree. And one of my favorite YouTubers who covers Destiny is a guy called Datto, and he put out a video this week that was really kind of I don't want to say slamming because that makes it sound hyperbolic, and he's actually very considered in his arguments, but he talked about how one of the big problems with that game, like as you know, a lot of us agreed, and I think we touched on in our review, is like the lack of incentivization to play some of the end game activities. And he said, you know, a huge reason for that is some of the coolest stuff is stuck in that DLC store, and it might just be cosmetic, but if you attach those cosmetics to in-game activities, you would feel at least somewhat more incentivized to play them. And I remember like Luke Smith's argument when people were losing their minds about the shader system, which is the thing that you use to dye your equipment. He said, well, you know, we want these to be a rewardable item, so that you want to play different modes and different activities to get them. But then when you look at how they're broken down, all of the legendary tier ones, barring the raid and trials ones, all of them, which are the ones that are shiny and sweet, are in the DLC store. And like, yeah, you can get those, you can get some of them for, you know, grinding week on week, but ultimately it's not enough, and you end up with the garbage ones. So it couldn't be more clear really what their motivation was. Yeah. And I think the reason that people are so angry is the pendulum has just swung too far. Like it's too aggressive, it's too greedy. And as we talked a little bit about last week, you know, they were there was a great series of tweets which are in the article Wes wrote, which had a bunch of developers, AAA and indie, weighing in on how these systems get designed and when they get implemented and who kind of the decision comes from. But that guy was saying, like, you cannot put your core, the things that are core to the identity of your game, behind these walls, because that feels obnoxious. And like when you're putting Darth Vader behind the fucking wall, pardon my French, like it couldn't be more. It's aggressive, like, right? It's reaching into your fucking jeans and taking the wallet out.
Definitely. Yeah. So I guess where we end up on this particular kind of wave of news, I think we're going to continue to see legislators weigh in, either sincerely or to score political points. So kind of keep that in mind. But I think we should all be kind of wary of treating governments and legislators as our savior for this issue. Like, oh, thank God, Belgium. Like that's a lot of what I saw on Reddit yesterday of like, yes, like based Belgium is going to like defeat the evil loot box. Like, come on, guys, you know, it's not that simple. It's not that cut and dry. And like, yes, certainly we want to see this system pressured, but ultimately the gaming industry and gamers, like we have to change it. You know, we have to be the strongest voice for action.
Yeah, and in the same feature we were talking about, that, you know, Wes asked those developers like what they felt the best way to actually for players who feel aggrieved by this to make their voices heard. And you know, they were very specific about, you know, providing concrete feedback in places like forums, like official forums and that, like, you know, with constructive advice. Obviously, like, just abusing developers is not the way to go. And if you read the piece, you'll see that, you know, how much of it, you know, sometimes will not be the decision of the person who has to implement it. So kind of, you know, chasing them around on the virtual streets is not a good idea. But yeah. So if you do want to be a little more informed on this, as Tim mentioned, we have a good story on the site talking to a bunch of experienced, you know, veteran developers and producers in the game industry who have dealt with these and helped design these systems. It's called The Case for It Against Loot Boxes, according to developers. It's on the front page right now. So and fundamentally voting with your wallet when it comes to the stuff in the game you like is probably the most powerful way.
Definitely. Okay, so let's move on from that to talk about Wolfenstein 2. This is a game that I feel like we've skipped over in some recent episodes after it came out, and I wanted to get a chance to dig through it a little bit. I think I'm the only one here who's finished it. I'm not going to dig into spoilers at all. I just kind of want to capture what we thought about the game, and because it's an interesting time for the single-player campaign shooter. I mean, this sort of feeds into our most recent discussion of, like, you know, microtransactions and Everything has to have multiplayer. Does it or doesn't it? Bethesda is one of the few major companies who's still committing to single player only games. We had Prey, we have Evil Within 2, and we have Wolfenstein 2 all this year.
Yeah.
Right. No multiplayer modes in those games.
Dishonored 2 last year.
Dishonored and actually the standalone expansion Dishonored 2 this year. Death of the Outsider. So 4 major releases with only single player. I think that's laudable and cool. But Wolfenstein 2, I think this is going to stand up as my favorite single player FPS of the year. I mean, there's not a ton of competition in that category. And I certainly have a ton of issues with the game, but really great ideas, great polish, amazing setting, and just, like a lovable cast of characters.
That was the thing, because I've only played a small bit of it, but I watched my other half play quite a bit of it in the same room we play games in, and that was the thing that I took away from like watching her play. It was how this sort of like this, I only said smorgasbord and I really don't want to, but this kind of like bizarre basket of really kind of over the top caricature-y, but kind of funnily so, and not to the point where they felt like super tropey, like they'd all just been pulled from like really obvious sources and jammed together. It felt like there was real. I kept being surprised by things they said and did, often like shocked, I think would be fair to say as well, by a couple of them. And the thing that kind of jumped out to me was it feels like over the course of those 2 games they've taken a beloved PC game and given it not quite a new identity, because I think there's this absolute through line to what Wolfenstein always was, but those 2 games I think almost stand alone as this kind of like weird black comedy now almost, where they kind of land, and it's got more and more surreal. Like they've really run with that whole like people all right, people are kind of vibing with the weirdness and like being not afraid to go all in on it. And I think that's actually pretty brave in this world of fairly cookie cutter big releases.
It's a conversation we had a lot. I feel like I've been a PC gamer for, it's going to be 10 years next year. We were having this conversation in 2012, 2013, 2014 a lot. Like shooters are too serious, games are too serious. These like Call of Duty style big campaign games. Borderlands is around that time, and Borderlands is very fun and playful.
Bulletstorm, I really hoped was going to kick off a new kind of wave of funsy shooters that didn't take themselves too seriously, and then it absolutely tanked.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, Wolfenstein 2's approach is just to have those things contrast hard against each other, back and forth, like within seconds. It's a game that deals with domestic violence.
Yeah.
Basically, at the beginning of the game, you're fighting your dad.
Yeah.
You're fist fighting your dad as like child BJ.
But it feels like, because I've seen that bit, and it feels like they handle that much more carefully than the David Cage thing that we all kind of looked at, and
heavens, yes,
like I rolled our eyes straight out of our heads, which was shown at the PlayStation Paris thing, I think.
So I mean, some folks have been critical of just how there's sort of this like whiplash effect between the Wolfenstein 2 being so brutal and so not just violent, but it's dark in a lot of moments, and then in the next moment it's basically having this like dick joke.
No, but that's great. I mean, if you remember like Peter Jackson's early films, like Bad Taste, and I think of Sam Raimi's movies as well. Like you can combine like searing ultra violence with really really funny slapstick, I think, or kind of or satire, and that's why I think Wolfenstein stands out. Like because you're right, that tonal. They managed to take what should be like a tonal dissonance and make it like really work as its own flavor.
I think it works really well actually, and it's some of the best writing and direction I've seen in a story-driven first-person game in some time. Again, without giving anything away, I think Wolfenstein 2 definitely had one of the best moments of the past year or 2 years I've experienced in a story. Really huge payoff. I felt like I had this emotional whiplash again. One of the things I wasn't really happy with was at one point in the game you get access, you get to make a choice between some different equipment that BJ can sort of take on, and it sort of has like this unique mechanic, each piece of equipment. And you have to commit to that piece of equipment for your campaign. But the way it plays out, I actually kind of liken it to the massive ending of Mass Effect 3, where there's kind of no difference. The game tries to build these like, I feel like I have to talk around this so much. Sorry, but like, you're given this unique piece of equipment, and then like your choices are go through door A, B, or C, but like Every time you do that, door A, B, or C are like all side by side.
Right.
So it kind of ends up being the same thing in a different clothing.
What did you think of the actual shooting itself? Because when the guy I was playing Iron Banner with last night, we were talking about Wolfenstein and shooters in general, and he was saying he felt like there wasn't enough feedback to when you were getting shot. Like he felt like there was like a slight lack of information that
definitely.
you'd suddenly be dead and you'd be like, what?
Yeah. I sort of hem and haw about that stuff. I tried playing the game with the UI off, and I was dying so quickly, so instantly, because I didn't have a sense of whether I was near death. So that was kind of an issue. But at the same time, I'm also a person who doesn't want their screen coded in kind of messages and stuff like that. So I don't know. As an FPS fan, I wasn't blown away. You know, I thought the silenced pistol was a really fun weapon. There's some really cool laser weapons with great particle effects. You're disintegrating these guys and sort of walking through their ash. You know, that's always great.
It's always a good time.
I was disappointed by the lack of bosses in a big way. The end of the game doesn't have an interesting kind of payoff set piece, but there are a lot of like little interesting facilities along the way. I thought, again, like they do a great job of putting you in these, like, you know, for lack of a better term, like very Nazi art directed, you know, in terms of like their artistic sensibility. You really feel immersed in the brutality of that aesthetic and like German totalitarian, you know, industrial design, and what that would look like if it had infinite budget and it was in America taking over, you know, like, and that gets you upset as a player. You're like, oh, shit, you know, they're here in Texas, and this is what it looks like. Oh man. And that's something else we can dig into. You know, a lot of the game's marketing, of course, a lot of the imagery that circulated around it in trailers and social media. You saw a Vice interview with Pete Hines, one of the VPs,
about how much he hated Nazis.
Yeah,
it felt like they kind of almost they weren't sure halfway through the campaign, and then just went, all right, we're just going to completely lean into this. And I don't want to like seem like I'm being mean about it, because I think that must have been quite a hard thing for them to wrestle with. Like, how do we sell this game whose subject matter touches on an amount of stuff that's being talked about in the real world? And like, they probably wanted to be very careful not to seem like they were trying to ride a wave, or at the same time pretend like put their heads in the sand. Like, it must have been quite a tough path to tread. But
for sure. One of the end results, though, and again without spoiling anything, is you know, all that imagery of like the KKK, you know, BJ walking through you know, a sort of Germanized, Naziized, picturesque American city in the early 60s, and what that looks and feels like, and how haunting that is. It's a very short portion of the game. Yeah. You're not doing that for hours. It's sort of like a level,
but it's potent,
and you're gone. Yeah, and that's sort of, I mean, I have trouble thinking of other games where we've had this issue where it just feels disproportionate as a result of the marketing. The marketing is using this one section for like almost all of its purposes. It's like, this is what the game is about. This is what it's about. And you get in there, and it's like, well, no, that's just a moment. Yeah. So that's, you know, that was a little deceptive. And I actually thought that was one of the most interesting moments of the game. That's when the game really, it's a very narrative heavy section. It's not a combat heavy section. And it has a lot to say about how corrupt and fragile America is.
But then do you think it was slightly disingenuous when they sort of, because they definitely, like, at one point the developers were saying this is not a political game, it's not about current politics, but that makes it sound like those things were I mean, from the stuff I saw, I felt like that stuff is absolutely in their minds.
I feel like it's developer versus publisher.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it depends on who you're asking.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I generally agree that the game isn't trying to address in any explicit ways, like, you know, Donald Trump or the alt-right or any of those like very contemporary current issues, and it would be sort of unfair for us to expect it to do that, partly because like it's been in development for years. But yeah, certainly like the game has things to say about, you know, it has a lot, you know, that level in particular has a lot to say about how fragile and how vulnerable America is. You know, you sort of see these like normal American citizens walking the streets and saying things like, yeah, you know, Nazis had some good ideas. And you see a conversation between a Nazi guard and the KKK and kind of what that looks and sounds like, and how haunting yet, you know, believable almost this might be. So I wanted to see more of that stuff. This is something I talked with Sam about, our reviewer. We both wanted to see, you know, that vision, you know, taken 10 times further. You know, comparatively, there's some stops in like New York City and Louisiana, and they're both kind of debris-ridden generic video game level fields, and you know they're perfectly serviceable, fun areas to shoot and move your way through. But like, you know, this could have been in any video game. Those
Do you think it paves the way naturally for a third one?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, there's not like a cliffhanger or anything.
Yeah. But
it definitely sets the stage for, okay, this is just the beginning. You know, like we're gonna take back America. That sort of thing. I guess one of my other final criticisms is that the game it does feel clipped. It cuts off a little bit short. A lot of people are saying, you know, oh, Wolfenstein 2 is only 6 or 7 hours. It's 10. First of all, it's 10 hours long, like minimum. And then there are all these other Enigma missions, as they're called.
10-hour campaign's fine for me, honestly.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
10 hours is 10 hours. So partway through the game, you get access to this this sort of mechanic where when you kill the Nazi officers, you can pick up a code pamphlet or piece of paper, I guess, off their body. You bring it back to your U-boat. You plug it in. You do this little like, you know, symbol matching mini game, and it gives you a mission to go and assassinate somebody else. So you return to existing levels. It's like repopulated with a different set of enemies. And I thought this was like honestly a great way of extending the life of the game and kind of getting more out of those assets. And what's the reward for it?
There's not really an explicit reward. There might be some collectibles on those missions, but it's just more gameplay, essentially. You know,
the fun is the reward. Tim, come on.
Yeah, you can spot the Destiny player. What, do you get a gun or not?
Yeah,
you get to shoot more Nazis. That's the reward.
Yeah,
that's the reward. But we should mention too that there's going to be a series of DLC episodes. There's going to be 3 of them. Although there's also an episode 0 that's out now. I think the first one's rolling out in early December, and they're all focused on new characters. You know, characters you haven't met before. There's like one of them's named Jessica Valiant. She's like an OSS agent with an eye patch, I think. There's like a football quarterback or something, and there's like a U.S. military GI. So, really curious to see how they extend the life of that game and kind of like what kind of budget those episodes got. Because if they're not having the normal voice actors and settings, like there's an opportunity for them to do exactly what I'm talking about and like explore America and sort of the Nazi takeover and kind of what that looks and feels like. One of the most interesting parts of that game, but there's also a chance that it feels really tangential and sort of like a side dish too. So going to be really interested to see how that goes.
Cool.
Okay, what else do we want to talk about today? Tim, I had you down to mention Destiny 2. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to get into there.
Yeah, I think I'll rattle through it just because I think it segs nicely into what you said, which is that I like story DLC quite a bit when it's done with high production values. And I mentioned on the pod last week that I've been up to see the Curse of Osiris DLC for Destiny 2, which is very much an injection of new story stuff. And Bungie's been doing these reveal streams weekly. And yesterday's one was, I don't want to say a disaster, but certainly did not go, I think, as intended. They kind of, last week they showed the campaign stuff and they introduced the characters. Osiris is this missing cool warlock who wears this kind of Aztec-y or Egyptian bird armor. He's got a ghost played by Moreno Baccarin from Homeland, and Firefly, she's really cool. She becomes your ghost, spoiler. And then this week they showed just the public space and this thing called the Infinite Forest, which is it sounds like it should be procedurally generated, but it isn't. It's this Vex, the Vex of the robots in it. It's this reality engine where they simulate like infinite realities to test themselves against their opponents. It's kind of like their version of the holodeck or whatever. And you go into it in the campaign, and then you can go into it when you're in the kind of free roam bit afterwards. But I think people were expecting some sort of new mode, like a horde mode type thing, or some dungeon crawly type thing. And what it really is just some more geometry that is kind of random but kind of not. It's actually hand designed and then snapped together like Legos. So like sometimes you'll get block A and there'll be this type of enemy on it, and sometimes you get block B and there'll be a different type of enemy. I think it was a little bit, it's kind of, I don't know if it's like a result of Bungie's control freakery that they don't want to go truly down the route of procedural, or they just can't, like that's too much of a technological ask. I'm sure that's a huge amount of, I know that's a huge amount of work, but anyway, the stream I think fell quite flat. They showed one of the public events. There's this new bespoke public event which looked cool. I played a bit of it at the thing. It's like you're bouncing around, dunking things and fighting enormous robots and closing warp gates, and then there's a boss, and it's really sweet. But then So the community manager who was hosting it was like, and this is our most rewarding public event we've ever done too. There are 2 chests at the end of it, and then he pops the chests, and out flies like 2 just tokens to take to the vendor, and like a blue rarity rifle. And this Stephen can already tell, like chat just immediately was like, like this is
See how it feels.
yeah, ruined. So there was a bit of a backlash after that. Like I'm just keen now to like, I think they've probably, I wonder if they like I said in my piece yesterday, which is on the site, like I kind of think they should be less focusing on what the features are in the DLC and much more, if they can, in the intervening time on like what the live team, which is a separate team, is doing to address the problems that are the perceived problems with the game, which have already been acknowledged, right? They do a weekly blog, and in the weekly blog a couple of weeks ago they published like a shopping list of stuff they wanted to fix, like, you know, to make things like the token system feel less RNG based, and to make, you know, to re-incentivize some activities. And I've seen some stuff actually as well, which I can't talk about because NDAs, that I think will help with that. And I think they really need to start talking about that stuff now, because that's where on PC, like the people I play with, I think we're only just coming up to the point where it starts to feel like, what else is there to do? Like I mentioned, I've got 3 characters at level cap. So I think we'll actually hit, you know, because we'll hit the DLC in a couple of weeks, that'll be fine. We'll just roll straight into it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what their new raid lair thing is, which will also come with the same expansion. So I'm still excited for the expansion, having played quite a bit of it. But Bungie's gonna Bungie. So one other thing I wanted to quickly mention as well was on the site at the moment we put up for the other game that's close to my heart, Hearthstone, an exclusive card reveal for the new set, which is coming out in December. It hasn't got an exact date, but it's called Kobolds and Catacombs. And our card, I'm keen to get feedback on whether people think the card is good or bad, because I think it's quite a hard one to call. It's one of the slowest cards that's ever been made. By slow I mean like it takes a long time for you to get value out of it. It's a card called Silver Vanguard. It's a 3/3 that costs 7 mana, so like terrible. Like you never want to be playing a 7 mana just to get a 3/3. But when it dies, it's Death Rattle effect, which is the same as Last Gasp in Legends. It will yank an 8-cost creature from your deck and put it on the battlefield. So when I was analysing it, I tried to look at which classes, the different 8-cost creatures they had, and I came to the conclusion that Paladin was probably the best fit, because you could get Tyrion Fordring, Ragnaros Light Lord, which are these really powerful defensive cards. But I think it's still pretty debatable whether you're going to be able to find room for a card it's super greedy.
Yeah, because it seems like, okay, you've got it on the battlefield. You played it, right? But the next step is either you or your opponent needs to find a way to activate that ability and get max value out of that 3/4. Like ideally, that's what
3/3. It's even worse.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you might have some tools to kill it yourself, but that's not.
I mean, your opponent's going to do everything you can not to kill it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's something for them to play around. It seems like a fun stumbling block, but
yeah.
Who knows?
I think probably it's the kind of card that like your operator is going to be for Twitch streams.
Gotcha.
More than it is for competitive decks.
Love a good troll. All right, so we want to end today's show as we do always, answering your questions here on Twitch and over in Discord, where our PC Gamer Club members are always asking us good stuff. So definitely hit us in the chat here if you have something you want to talk about, or you want to see us talk about topic recommendations and whatnot. I'll get things started. Actually, I had one that this is something I was talking to somebody at the Rainbow Six Siege event, somebody from IGN about. This debate and conversation I've seen some other peers dig into of whether PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds should even qualify for a Game of the Year award. Should we even like consider it for that? Should it be disqualified because it's early access, because it's not done, even though it's releasing in December anyway? But what do you guys think about that? The notion of early access games, unfinished games, betas, whatever, are they eligible for our Games of the Year?
Steven?
I'm gonna say yes. Like it's a product that's out in the wild. You can pay money for it. Do I think it's likely that it would be getting Game of the Year? Like, would I personally vote for PUBG to be our Game of the Year? Hell no. But I think it's certainly worthy of being on the list and being a contender.
I agree. I think it's a game. You can spend money on it. I'm willing to be a bit like loosey goosey about it. I think you wouldn't want to like create a situation where you couldn't give a game you felt genuinely was the most special experience of the year, that award.
Here's the thing, though. Like, I don't know. I've felt this way for a while, but like, you know, early access has certainly muddied the waters of what is a released game. But like, those waters have always been muddied because games now, like, they launch, but they launch broken, and then like updates and patches fix them over time. And like, the idea of a game ever being finished is becoming a really nebulous concept. So just because a game has an early access label doesn't mean it's any more or less complete than doesn't necessarily mean that it's any more or less complete than an already finished game that ships totally broken and needs a bunch of post-launch fixes, you know?
Yeah, I'd even take it a step further. I mean, it's tough. I see a lot of value in these awards, and okay, like, you know, we edit a major gaming publication that's probably going to bias us a little bit. I think, you know, it's great to sort of be able to say, as a publication, here's what we stand for, and sort of like how our values as a group and what we like in games. So whether it's like lots of content, great value, like innovation, or, you know, great stories, you know, what do we as a group value? Because that depending on the group of people, that's going to change, right? And it's a way of sort of capturing our identity as a group and making arguments. It's a lot of fun, right? But on the other hand, the way that games release, the way they update their lifespan, games as services, it's fundamentally changed. I mean, arguably Minecraft is kind of the start of that process in the modern age, right? So I'd almost want to see some kind of system, and it's like very hard to imagine how this would work, where, you know, we're really considering what were the best experiences we had in a given year, and we're able to sort of see that discussion shift where Overwatch, you know, becomes part of that. World of Warcraft becomes part of that because, I don't know, maybe they had a ton of great updates this year. They fixed a bunch of stuff. They announced vanilla, like, you know, where it's less about the exact technical day and year that the game released in, and more about like, okay, what do we play this year? What do we love? What do we have fun in the most?
My worry as well is sometimes I feel like staying in EA could be like, or not putting out a 1.0 version is a way of dodging criticism. You can go, well,
Totally.
don't review it yet.
Yeah.
It's still not out, and you'll be like, you've been selling this thing for 5 years, like, with, you know, almost literally with some games. And you're like, you know, at some point we consider, we give advice, consumer advice, and like, it's beholden on us to have a steer on something like that.
Definitely. All right, well, there you go. We're all on the same side. Very good. Jesus Faction in Twitch chat wants to know, what do you think about that analyst that said that gamers are undercharged? So he's referencing a story that we published on Monday. The headline was, financial analyst says gamers aren't overcharged, they're undercharged. I think you can sense in the tone of my voice.
Was he the one who said, if you like Star Wars, it's better bang for your buck to play Battlefront than it is to watch the film?
Yeah, there's some pretty amazing stuff in here. And this was, okay, the context of this was, okay, you know, the financial side of EA, and okay, so EA itself actually came out with a statement saying that, you know, okay, we dialed down the costs of a lot of this stuff in Star Wars Battlefront 2 by 75%. You know, we're turning basically we're turning cash currency off temporarily, and EA was reassuring its investors that this would not affect their quarterly results effectively. And we're sort of like, well, then why is it in there in general? That's a different question. So this analyst was sort of jumping in saying like, yeah, I agree. It's like a blip on the radar. You know, in fact, again, his statement was that gamers aren't overcharged, they're undercharged. So part of his argument here was really wrapped around he called it quantitative analysis. And I think that's maybe a little bit generous. But this notion that, you know, games provide the best like dollar per hour ratio than other entertainment. And there's some really amazing comments in our story. That
it replies to the Reddit thread as well, talking about how like, yeah, if you put a poster up in your bedroom and look at it for like 20 years, and that is offers a far better outlay.
Fractions of a penny per hour for that poster. So yeah, let me find the quote here. So yeah, part of the stuff he was saying was, despite its inconvenience to the popular press narrative, ouch, that stings. If you like Star Wars and play video games at an average rate, you're far better off skipping the movie and playing the game to get the most bang for your buck. Like as if games and movies are just equivalent experiences. Like all entertainment is the same, and we get the same things out of it. Like,
oh my god.
Let me fill this one, Jesus Faction. I think he's talking bollocks. That's my answer.
I'll just quote one more thing. The guy's name is Evan Wingren.
I mean, of course it is.
If you take a step back and look at the data, an hour of video game content is still one of the cheapest forms of entertainment. I don't necessarily disagree with him there. Quantitative analysis shows that the video game publishers are actually charging gamers a relatively inexpensive rate and should probably raise prices. I don't know. Again, I think it's totally different. You know, the experience you get out of something like What Remains of Edith Finch, you know, a short but densely impactful game that kind of punches you in the face with its ideas and its polish and its concentration of art assets. Cuphead is another great example versus, you know, Divinity, or, you know, Original Sin, or Destiny, like a true games as service, or like a, you know, long.
You don't go like Godfather 3 was better than Godfather 1 because it was longer, right? Big, you know.
There were more scenes. I got more Pacino for my dollar.
He can take the popular financial analyst narrative and stick it up his ass. That's
good stuff.
That's my response.
Good stuff. Let's see if we can find another question or two here. Let me know if you guys have any.
I like this one from Discord. It's a fun question. Score Pooler on Discord asks, what famous games would be interesting as another genre? Like if Half-Life was a turn-based strategy game instead of a first-person shooter.
Oh, yes, please. I would like... this is going to be a really boring answer. I'd like Dawn of War, like a 40k game, or a Warhammer Fantasy Battle game, but done as a turn-based grid game, like Final Fantasy Tactics. So not like not real time. Proper like grid, move 3, shoot 1, XCOM type vibe.
So like wouldn't that be like a really authentic recreation, almost of like the actual tabletop?
Yes, Stephen, you struck instantly on why I wanted it. But yeah, with like full customization, like painting stuff as well.
Yeah,
that'd be amazing.
I like the tactics, the Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, 40k Tactics. There you go.
I'm gonna say
40k Tactics.
Almost any classic PC game would be amazing as a visual novel right now, or any kind of a Quake visual novel, dating game, adventure game. Like, please, Bethesda.
What if you could date the monsters?
I mean, I don't know. That would like really. The brand managers would just be pulling their hair out at, like, you know, Doom is a game about violence, not dating. But I don't know. I think it'd be funny. Dwarf Fortress is another one that comes to mind. But yeah, I don't know. What other permutations of stuff like... What
about Dwarf Fortress as a like Shadow of Mordor style lush 3D amazing fortress builder?
Like Dwarf Fortress, the 3D action adventure game.
That's interesting.
With a budget of $40 trillion to create that.
Yeah. No loot boxes though.
That's the only way they can.
Steve, have you got any more?
I'm trying to think, and I genuinely am like falling to pieces here. Other than like really, I don't know.
That's because your brain's just going, wow, wow is wow, wow is an MMO.
Yeah,
wow is life.
EverQuest kart racing.
Praise be to WoW. Yeah. Oh, I would go for Warcraft Kart Racer. That like those are iconic characters.
That would actually be quite good.
Yeah. Or you know what? Actually, now that we're kind of like, since I'm owning the Warcraft thing, I like any kind of like a Warcraft. This is crazy. What if they made World of Warcraft, but like a real-time strategy game?
Oh yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so you'd have like bases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe some orcs.
Like maybe a frozen throne of some kind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe the number 4 appended to it.
I just don't think it would work. But I think Blizzard agrees.
But Steven, it would be the first game in this series. We've never seen one of those. Certainly not.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be crazy if they started the first game of the series with the number 4 just to like check out how wacky we are?
That would be interesting. Yeah. Or like a Dota card game. That would be wild.
You should just email them today, Steve. I don't know if you've thought of this, but I've got an idea for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you guys considered this?
Good stuff.
Oh boy!
You know,
I would instantly be blacklisted.
One of the more interesting premises.
Premisi.
God, that's weird. That I've enjoyed this year is a game called Moonlighter, where it's essentially a Zelda-style isometric. It's not pixel art, but you know, it's sort of like lightly illustrated dungeon crawling game. You know, procedural dungeons. You go in, you beat up monsters in like north, south, east, west movement style. But you gather like this loot of varying rarity, and then you come back to your store, and then the other half of the game, Moonlighter, is pricing that loot correctly, and understanding like, okay, there's different types of adventurers who are coming in my store looking for different kinds of loot, and they'll all like, you know, if you price it too low, you're sort of giving them a better deal. You could have made more money. And you're upgrading your store, and you know.
Can you trick them by like pricing a garbage item quite high, hoping they kind of like.
It's kind of like, do they like it or do they not? Like all the different customers, as I understand, like different stuff. So I guess what I'm getting at is, I love to see kind of interesting like peripheral takes on you know, just as if, okay, it's a dungeon crawler, but you're the guy in town who sells the items. You know, I want more games that kind of deal with that kind of stuff. I know there are like actual item selling fantasy games out there.
Racketeer.
Exactly.
Jody on the indie channel, they covered that game Quest Giver, is it called, or something, which works like that.
Yeah. But I don't know. What if I'm, you know, in FPS terms, I'm the guy who outfits the armory or something. I have no idea what that looks like. You know, I want to more like, you know, self-aware fun games like that deal with genre.
My other great unmade game idea, they're all unmade obviously, is like a really serious RPG but set in like a modern office where like the battle is like office politics. So it'd be like Office Space the RPG, and you kind of level up your middle manager eventually to be slightly higher middle manager.
What if that also had the Nemesis system bolted onto it?
What if that's already my life, Steve?
But I'm very glad I'm in Canada.
Intense.
Ooh. Moonlighter has gorgeous graphics, by the way.
Yeah, it looks good. I think we could all do with a few more Warhammer games, though. Not enough of those going around. Not exploring enough genres.
There must be some graph which is like the number of games in a license versus the quality. Right?
Right.
I don't know which goes on the X and Y axis.
Yeah. What's the perfect ratio there? I'm not sure.
Less.
Cool, guys. Well, unless anybody has any other questions, and thanks for those who chimed in. And
who would be your dream developer to make a Warhammer game that doesn't currently make one?
I mean, I would have said Relic, but they just did. God.
I would like Respawn to make a 40k game.
Wow.
That'd be pretty good.
I mean, they have mechs and stuff. Sure. Yeah. Okay. And Titanfall. Yeah.
I'd be okay with Respawn. I'm trying to think of anyone that I'd prefer better.
I mean, I do think Obsidian could dig into the lore of it. I mean, Warhammer has such
That'd be cool.
Bizarre and intense lore. I think they could find really weird, cool stories within it. You know, imagine Pillars of Eternity, but Warhammer. That might be neat.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, but also the guys that made Sonic Mania. Let's get a side-scrolling platformer Warhammer game where you're just the Emperor jumping on the heads of
psionic wheelchair.
the heads of orcs. You know, that sounds good. Man, Space Marines are weird. Space Marines are strange.
Imagine Respawn do the Horus Heresy. That'd be pretty good.
Nice. All right, guys, I think I'm going to call it there because I don't know about you. I'm getting hungry for some Thanksgiving dinner. Hope you all have a nice holiday. If you're here in the U.S. and Canada, you're celebrating that holiday. But if you're not, you can still check in on our site for some great deals this weekend and into Cyber Monday early next week over on PCGamer.com. It'd be hard to miss on the front page, but we'll also be sending this stuff out individually on Twitter. If we spot like a particularly great deal on an SSD or a monitor, we're going to let you know. So, you know, if you're interested in that stuff, hopefully it's there for you. But thanks again for watching this week, and we will see you again next Wednesday at 1 o'clock Pacific time here on twitch.tv/PCGamer or on the usual podcast feeds. Until then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.